We got two teams, we got a panel, but we need something to talk about, y'all. Who wants to know what the result is?
Result.
And this might resonate with some of our scholars here. Result that introverts make the best leaders.
We have 12 minutes in here. 12 minutes.
Once again, you guys have 4 minutes. When you have 1 minute remaining, you will get the alpaca. What is that? Like an alpaca twerk? I don't know what that is. An alpaca nod of some sort. And then when time is up, you will get an... Whoa, that's really dark. Okay, we'll figure it out. Anyways, alright everyone, put your hands together, show some love for the first speaker of the Affirmative team.
This is finally my height. This is fantastic.
I actually, before you guys spoke, I actually lowered it. It was like this high before, so. Alright, you have 4 minutes, you may begin when you are ready.
Okay, good afternoon audience, respected opponents, and of course our lovely adjudicators. My name is Michelle Lam, and I am the first Affirmative speaker, and today I will be proving to you why introverts are the best leaders. I will be discussing why introverts make better decisions due to their thought processes which cannot be swayed by the media and public opinion. And they can make the right decisions above all regardless of the general view on a point. My second speaker will be discussing the importance of the determined mindsets of introverts and how they lead and are not led by others. And my third speaker will be discussing why extroverts make the worst leaders, and my fourth will be rebutting the opposition's points. But first of all, let's start by defining this resolution. What is an introvert? Classically, we refer to introverts as those with introverted characteristics. But what does that really mean? It means that they are very determined, concerned with their own thought processes, are not easily swayed, and though they can be viewed as self-centered, it means that above all, they can make the right decisions. They cannot be pushed to make wrong decisions by those who are unable or less educated than them, or just because the majority thinks that this is the right thing to do, just due to the media or other forms of propaganda. What is the best leader? Somebody who can promise economic growth, stability, a good country, humanitarianism in the finest. We can make a country that can sustain its own economy and also help those who are less fortunate. Only an introvert can ensure this, and that is why we need to have introverts as the best leaders. Okay, first of all, let's talk about why introverts make the best leaders. Firstly, they cannot be easily swayed. While we look at many extroverted leaders, such as Tony Abbott in Australia, who are easily swayed by the public and vitriolic opinion of immigrants coming into the country, what Australia really needs in terms of leaders is somebody who is not pushed through decisions like that. Recently, we have had an immigration policy that resulted in almost 60,000 boats being turned back. A cruel and military operation that will result in many needing in the aid that Australia can afford to them, being turned back to countries where they could possibly be persecuted, jailed, and even at the worst of times, cruelly executed. Why is this happening? Why? Because there is general opinion in Australia that people, or boat people as we so cruelly dehumanize them, will take our jobs, they will take our lives, they will ensure a downfall in our economy. Though through statistics we know this is not true, the media has propagated this, and this giant public outcry of falsity and distruth has led to Tony Abbott enforcing this ridiculous policy. If Tony Abbott were an introvert, if he were not extroverted, if he did not listen to the media, would this policy have happened? No, not at all. With this as a prime example of why introverts make the best decisions and why extroverts inherently make wrong decisions, how can you deny that an introverted leader is the best one for a country? And I would like to quickly end my statement by saying that a leader needs to lead. He is not to be led by the people. He is chosen because he will not listen to the unwashed masses who cry out for people to die. Thank you.
Negative teams, you guys have 60 seconds to prepare your rebuttal, starting now. Scholars, I need you guys to put your hands together for the first speaker on the negative team. You see, now it's too short.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Nora Jambiala, and I'm the first speaker for the negative team against the motion that introverts make the best leaders. I would like to start by introducing what an introvert is. It was a term defined by Carl Jung, the very man who coined the term. It is a person characterized primarily by concern for his or her own thoughts and feelings, as defined by the very person who made the term. The first point that my team will be bringing up is that a leader requires selflessness, for the decisions are for the subjects, are for the people, and are not for the leader. It's about the people, not about the person who makes the decisions. A leader must have effective communication in order to persuade for action, in order to support the people who are relying upon them to make the right decisions that will govern their very lives. They need not only to communicate, but also to be able to listen. Confidence is key from a leader and for the people to be able to have confidence in their leader. I would like to rebut a point that was brought up by my opposition. They said that an introvert would not be swayed. This makes an assumption about the characteristics of extroverts, that they will listen, but that this listening would sway them in the wrong direction, which I believe is an assumption that cannot be made. The fact is that leaders need to be able to be influenced by the people, because the decisions are for the people. And so those very people will have a good outlook on what decisions are the best possible decisions for their futures, for their everyday lives. The fact is that leaders do not have the insight into the everyday lives of the people that those very people do have. So I urge the House and the audience to support the negative team against the motion that introverts make the best leaders today. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. 60 seconds goes to the affirmative team for the rebuttal starting now. I become the official mic height checker, and I use myself as a measure. So it's about my ear it works. All right, you got 4 minutes. You may begin when you are ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, we firmly believe that introverts do indeed make the best leaders for 3 key reasons. Firstly, they are not easily swayed by public opinion. Secondly, they think things through. And thirdly, simply by looking at what a leader ought to be, you'll see what we mean, and my rebuttals will be embedded throughout this whole speech. So, let's get into point number 1. Firstly, a leader is supposed to have independent thought. A leader is supposed to lead public opinion, not just to blindly follow it. Introverts are concerned primarily with the self, and because of that, they follow their own opinions, the opinions they know in their heart to be right, and they are not easily swayed by the public opinion simply telling them what they think they ought to do. They are not easily swayed by the mass media and public opinion, and it is because extroverts pay too much attention to the opinions around them that they are much more likely to make the popular choice as opposed to simply the right choice, as we've seen with this rather controversial Australia situation. As a result, extroverts are more easily swayed, they are more easily lobbied, and this leads to worse, polluted and diluted decisions. Point number 2, introverts think things through. In biology, and we're really getting into the science of this here, introverts have a naturally high level of stimulation in the ascending reticular activating system. And extroverts need to get to this high level by socializing. But because introverts don't need this excessive socializing, it's the ideas that really get them going. Therefore, they love to think things through properly. They will think the policies through. They will consider every outcome, and through that process, the best judgment will be made. But in stark contrast, we have an extrovert who is more likely to just make a snap decision and then go to a party. And that is certainly not what a leader ought to be doing. Now, the third point, what is a good leader? The good leader is supposed to set the direction, not to control the people who follow them. Companies are simply way too big for one person to have a firm, grit, and detailed understanding of everything that's going on. But extroverts consider too much, all of the things, what's going on around them. Therefore, they'll want to play a greater role in what's going around them. Therefore, they will get bogged down in the day-to-day running of the company. And employees will resent this intrusion and invasion into their lives, and therefore employees will be less motivated because the employees will feel that they aren't the ones running the company, it is simply one man. Now, whereas an introvert is willing to take a step back, focus on the bigger picture, and through that, they can be a visionary. So in conclusion, if you believe in autonomy of decision, if you believe in proper thought processes, not just bunking off to a party, and if you believe in leaders who are truly visionaries, then please vote for our side of the motion. Because introverts are not easily swayed. They think things through. They are, quite frankly, the definition of the good leader. So, panel, I implore you, please side with us, because if you do, in the words of Barack Obama, we'll love you back! Thank you!
Is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? I think he's gonna do it. Is he gonna do it? He's gonna do it. Alright, 60 seconds to the negative team. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, put it together for the second speaker on the negative team.
Okay, can I start whenever? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Nani. I'm from the United States, and I'm on the negative side of this team. And so the affirmative speaker just came up here with, you know, a horrifically bad Obama joke and a really bad Australian accent. But if you look back at the speech, he didn't actually say anything at all. That were made. So first, they talk about how introverts are not easily influenced. Let's look at the actual definition of introvert that we've all agreed to. Someone who is primarily preoccupied with their own thoughts and feelings and minimize contact with others. This would mean that an extrovert is willing to listen to other people. Nowhere does it say that they're going to be influenced by these people or can't think independently. That's just a weird assumption made by the affirmative. So this point that extroverts are going to be influenced by so realize this weird Tony Abbott, weird example that they're trying to apply to every extrovert situation is just irrelevant. We're not even going to talk about it anymore. Okay. So now let's talk about thinking things through. So this is literally what they said. Introverts have some weird, stimulus of chemical in some part of the brain, which makes them not want to socialize that much. And because they don't want to socialize that much, they're going to think things through in their own mind. That link literally doesn't make any sense at all. They're saying, yeah, I know it's science, but you don't know science is what I'm saying. Extroverts are able to think things through. Just because they socialize and listen doesn't mean they can't think independently and actually be able to intelligently formulate a plan or policy for whatever group they're leading. Now let's look back at our points that have just been completely ignored by the affirmative speaker. So, first, leaders are servants that should preoccupy themselves with the thoughts and views of other people, the people that they're serving. So if you look back at all of their points, they're advocating for some weird dictatorship and saying that it's going to work. Look back at the potential. Leaders serve the people. Leaders should not be primarily concerned with their own thoughts and just be like, oh, I'm right 100% of the time. No one's going to influence me. That's a really narcissistic, narrow-minded view to have of some sort of leader. And one point that's gone completely ignored is that leaders are supposed to be able to communicate. If leaders just don't communicate, then people are going to have no idea what's going on. They're just going to be like, what? Like, it's not a good way to lead if you can't tell people what you're doing, even if your ideas are great. So, like, Obama gave a speech. Oh, am I done? Oh, okay. So, Obama gave a speech a few days ago about his immigration executive order. Whether you liked it or not, he told you what it is so that you can form your own opinion. If he just sat in the Oval Office like, oh, my executive order is right, I don't need to say anything to anybody, then it would, like, the people would just be confused and he would probably be hated more than he already is, which is saying a lot. Affirmative case is made up of assumptions that extroverts can be influenced by other people, and another assumption that because they socialize, they can't think things through. The negative has laid out multiple points, including leaders have to be selfless, and leaders have to be able to effectively communicate to do their jobs, and they've just been gone completely ignored. It's clear that introverts don't make better leaders because they're unable to communicate effectively. They're primarily concerned with their own thoughts, and the affirmative's points don't reference extroverts in an accurate way. So please vote negative. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, scholars, this debate is starting to heat up. That's how it's supposed to go down. We got 60 seconds to the affirmative team starting now. All right, scholars, make some noise for the third speaker on the affirmative team. All right, you have 4 minutes. You may begin when you are ready.
Bold for the second speaker to assert that our second speaker had no contentions when his entire speech was full of rebuttals, right? At the end of the day, I have 3 main rebuttals to give before I move on to my argument on the detriment of extroverts as leaders. First of all, we are okay with that definition. We're not like scrolling this motion, right? We see that leaders are not followers. We do not want individuals who are swayed by the public opinion. We want individuals who prioritize their own self-belief and their own self, right? Even if you were to concede that a leader is selfish, that's all right, because he's selfish for his own organization and not for the majority of the people, which is what we concede at the end of the day. Second of all, is strawman on the dictatorship, right? That's a clear strawman argument. We never wanted a dictatorship like Assad. We need leaders who are consistent in opinions and who are not going to be listening to other people, and they're not going to be swayed in different periods. Right? And we characterize extroverts as people who will be willing to listen to and equate societal norms to societal conventions. Right? We want leaders who understand the welfare of the nation rather than the public opinion. We've been very consistent in that particular notion. Finally, who said that introverts do not want to communicate? That's another straw man on our point. We said we prioritize personal beliefs under the case of introverts rather than societal notions, which is a fundamental role of a leader to make sure that he considers the welfare of a nation rather than a particular societal notion or societal belief. So my argument in this debate is a detriment of extroverts as leaders, right? So I have 3 main points on this. First, on the idea of objective considerations. Second of all, on decision making and how extroverts are not as good as introverts. And finally, how extroverts are incongruous with the democratic system. First point on the objective considerations, right? The definition of an extrovert is an individual who is more subjective than objective. On the other hand, an introvert is more subjective than objective. Even if we concede that an extrovert is more pragmatic and economic principles, we see that the role of a leader is distinct from sectors like the financial sector, right? We see that the financial sector is there to take care of pragmatic principles. We need leaders in order to make emotional decisions. For instance, if we were to intervene in the ISIS in Syria, right, where thousands of lives have been massacred on a daily basis, we need leaders who can empathize with these kind of individuals in order to intervene in the international platform. My point is, introverts are more likely to consider emotional principles because they are less objective than extroverts. My second point on decision making, right? We see that an extrovert, when thrown with several factors and mediums of information, cannot make a particular decision. We see that there are many forms of analysis such as anchoring and confirmation bias that limit leaders that are extroverts in order to make the best decision for a nation. This is because they essentially cannot distinguish between one particular topic and another. To give you an example, right, for a CEO in a major economic company, right, he will be flooded with different information on why a particular model will be effective or will not be effective. Under that kind of paradigm, an extrovert leader would be ineffective, as he could be the scholar's bowl question, right? The analysis something. You cannot decide on different options. So under that kind of paradigm, we see that the CEOs cannot make the best decision, and thus extroverts are not the best leaders. Finally, I'd like to talk about why extroverts are incongruous with the democratic system, right? When we elect a leader, we already concede that he is the best individual for our nation and that he will be the one who represents our needs. An introvert is perfectly congruous to that idea and that principle of the democratic system because we trust him in order to make decisions and he trusts himself. That's what we've been very consistent on, that introverts are more likely to trust themselves, their personal beliefs, and their particular notions rather than societal notions and the public opinion at the end of the day. And thus we see that it is congruous with the democratic system for an introverted leader to be elected rather than an extroverted leader. So what have I shown you in this debate? I've shown you first of all why introverted leaders are more likely to be subjective than objective, and thus they make more emotional decisions and moral ethical concerns. Second of all, I've shown you why decision making is further enhanced through introverted leaders, and finally why introverted leaders are congruous with the democratic system. All these reasons I'm proud to propose. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much. 60 seconds to the negative team for rebuttal, starting now. To the next speaker, the third speaker on the negative team.
Speaker for the negative, I am here to convince you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that introverts do not make the best leaders. Now let me start off my debate by first pointing out some rather ludicrous points that is made by the opposition. The first speaker has stated that somehow immigration policy and these deaths of all these poor Haitians and Central Americans were somehow influenced by extroverts. But instead, this is absolutely incorrect. In fact, it is these people who just hold themselves up in their desks all day and go and say to the advisors, oh, please go away. We don't care about the public opinion. These are the people who commit such crimes. These are the people who just do not care about the media at the front door that are demanding some parlo or some asylum to these people that are suffering out in sea in these boats as they speak of. The second speaker has stated that these introverts have to think. And we do agree with that. Thoughts are the very things that build up to our words, that build up to our actions. But without communication, a major point of our argument that they have completely dropped, these thoughts are unable to be formulated into these actions. Sure, we all have these great thoughts in our debate, but without people that are able to communicate it, like this live example in front of the stage right now, we will have none of this cheering in front of me right now. None of you guys will know anything that we have stated in our tables, whispering to each other. It will no longer matter because the people do not know anything about it. The third speaker has stated something that is extremely weird, as my second speaker has stated. They said, introverts are not going to listen to anyone. But I have just one word to say here. Dictatorship. If I'm not going to listen to anybody, I've just formed a dictatorship here. Think about Hitler. I'm pretty sure nobody likes Hitler in this room right now. He was an introvert. He was this random bearded guy that hold himself up and down in a bunker. He was this random guy that just had a beard and mustache and hold himself in a bunker. And look at the chaos that has been erupted because of that. Look at the people that were suffering in Germany afterwards. And this was because he did not take any public opinion into account. His idea of nationalism was simply I say and you follow. And that is not how the contemporary society today functions. They've also completely dropped our points and communication. And in fact, I would like to say that this is a major problem, especially because I will be addressing this later on in my speech. And I would like to counter CEOs very briefly, and I will also bring this up. They've said CEOs do not make the best leaders because they are extroverts. But in fact, let me ask you a question here. How come CEOs made it to the top of the company? How come CEOs are the richest, the most influential people in the world today? And that is because they are extroverts. These people, and let me tell you, CEOs go to parties, and yet they have $340 million, yet they have jumbo jets, and yet they have free food, and all these butlers to take care of them. This is because that they are outgoing. This is because that they know how to communicate. They know how to share their ideas. They know how to take a thought, share with people, and formulate it into an action. And now on to the points that I have to make today. First of all, let me remind you once again that an introvert are people who are shy, people that do not like talking in front of the stage, unlike me. My first attention here. Another point I have to make is that leaders are servants of the people, and that means they must communicate with the people. They must be a friend to the people. They must know their people. They must know their subjects in order to be servants of them. To be connected, to be servants of the people, leaders must communicate.
All right, I apologize. I have to communicate to you. The 4 minutes is up.
Okay.
And so...
Okay. Well, I have one last point to make.
Well, actually, I have to cut off that one last point. But we'll make some noise, and we're going to... Thank you very much. All right, 60 seconds to the negative team starting now. All right, ladies and gentlemen. We are coming down to the home stretch. We're the last speaker, so I need all of y'all to be thinking about what you guys want to say, how you guys want to contribute to this discussion. So, everyone make some noise for the last speaker on the affirmative team.
Hi, my name is Miriam. I'm the final speaker for the affirmative team, strongly proposing the motion that introverts make the best leaders. And I'd like you guys to focus on this point, because there's a large naivety in the negative team's argument, not only in the fact that they provide no evidence for any of the generalized statements that they make, but also due to the fact that they did not deconstruct the logistics of this argument, which is that not introverts can be the only leaders in existence, because we need to make everything relative, right? Different countries require different types of leaders, but that they make the best leaders in all of these circumstances, which I will address. So to make the first general rebuttal, it's that the negative team's argument is slightly ignorant. First and foremost, they say introverts are shy. Dictatorship. And they also say the people don't know. Who are these people? Well, we don't know either, because there's no specificity running throughout any of their points. Another thing, I'd like to address the point on dictatorship, which is that in our free world, we have democracy. But they're trying to suggest that introverts have to be equated with dictatorship. And I'll tell you why, no, introverts can be equated with democracy. When we elect a leader, we don't elect a leader based on their hairstyle or whether we like their mottos and slogans. The most educated of us, the people that actually know what they're talking about, will elect a leader based on their principles. If we like their ideals, we vote for them. That is how they go into power. That is how democracy works. And to justify this, the third speaker was talking about how Hitler didn't take the public opinion. But if he knew anything about what he was talking about, he'd know that Hitler came into power after taking the public opinion, and that is when the atrocities happened. Secondly, I'd like to rebut the generalized definition. I mean, it's awesome if we can all live by the Oxford Dictionary, but unfortunately, life has many dimensions to it, as does this debate, as does our argument, and does not, their argument, have many definitions to it. They said that introverts take people to the wrong direction, but we strongly disagree. They obviously take them in the right direction because they have enough conviction to believe in what they believe in and not be swayed by the lobbies, not be swayed by the mass media, not be swayed by who is sponsoring their government program. And lastly, I'd like to conclude the rebuttal by saying, in general, not only does the negative argument not provide any evidence for any of the points that they make, and not only are their points largely generalized and not taking into consideration the different situations that various other countries are living in, but they also provide hardly any evidence, and they just make generalized statements without them being backed up. This is why I'm going to tell you why our argument provides evidence, can be backed up, and although it's being presented in a negative light, if we were to actually take a step back and see everything holistically, we'd realize that, yeah, introverts do make the best leaders. They're not the only leaders out there, but they make the best leaders. First and foremost, from a political perspective, they make the most rational decisions because they are not influenced by lobbies, they're not influenced by external factors. The evidence that we provided for this was the Australia example, and I'd like to provide the UK economy example, which is another immigrant example. There's a large public opinion that immigrants are coming in and they're stealing all our jobs. Clearly this is not the case because the majority of them are self-employed and they contribute £7 billion to the UK economy. However, due to crazy Nigel Farages like UKIP and the BNP, what we find now is that the public opinion is being swayed by negative leaders that are extroverted. Secondly, we said that they are decisive. And thirdly, we said that the detriment of extroverts will lead to the decline of many aspects of the government, politically and economically. I mean, if the blind lead the blind, they all end up in the ditch, and you'll end up in the ditch if you support the negative team's argument. I'd like to end on the argument that pragmatism versus let's all be happy and live in a land of rainbows. We're going to be realistic about this. We're going to tell you that introverts make the best leaders, and I'll end by saying the art of leadership is saying no, not yes, because it's very easy to say yes. So say no to their argument.
Last 60 seconds, the negative team starting now. Ladies and gentlemen, to bring this debate to a close, at least the portion on stage, show some love to the last speaker on the negative team. People love you. That's what I heard.
Thank you.
All right, you have 4 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, respected side proposition, and honorable adjudicators. Today the motion is that introverts make the best leaders. And as we are a side opposition, we believe that this motion must fall. Now, what have we talked to you and proven to you today? First, the point on communication, that leaders need to communicate to the people that they lead, the people that they are in charge of. Now, side proposition has completely ignored this point. We have brought this up many times, yet they still have not found any rebuttals to this. If you want to be a good leader, you need to be the bridge between your ideas and ideas of this organization or country that you're leading and the people. Without effective communication, there is no bridge. And this does not lead to a stable and effective government or organization or whatever this leader is leading. Now, second of all, the concept of democracy. Now, if an introvert, as side proposition has said, does not listen to anyone, is not swayed by public opinion, this is a dictatorship. This is not a democracy. If people do not know that the leader is taking into their opinion, the leader is focusing solely on their opinions and their instincts and their emotions. But ladies and gentlemen, what happens when this leader is wrong? What happens when they make the wrong decision based upon their emotions and their judgments? Their whole society will fall to ruin. There is no one to stop them if they do not take into consideration the better judgment and opinions of a majority of people rather than their own. Now, thirdly,
the points that affirmative team have made are purely assumptions. Now, they have gotten on our case on the fact that we have not given any evidence. Yet, we look at their case and we see that they have not given any evidence either. Now, they have said that extroverts are influenced easily by the people. Now, we say this isn't necessarily true. As long listening does not mean that I would follow your opinion. For example, if I was a leader of a country and someone came up to me and asked me, hey, Ben, you should consider making the alpaca your national motto. Now, just because they tell me this does not mean I'm going to do it, and I won't. Sorry, Dan, but this is an example of where you are not necessarily influenced, you just have to listen. Now, second of all, they have said that extroverts don't think things through, because they're too busy going to parties and being social people. Now, we say that just because they are extroverts doesn't mean they don't think things through. They will think things through just as much as introverts will. They still have their own ideas and how they can come up with a better philosophy and plan for their own countries and organizations. And so we say this point is completely irrelevant. Number 3, they have said that extroverts are more subjective. Now, we say this isn't true because extroverts are just as subjective as introverts. And actually, introverts are more subjective. If they're only thinking about their emotions and their opinions, they are being subjected to the fact that they are not listening to other people. They are purely basing their own decisions on their own ideals. And fourthly, the affirmative team needs to prove that introverts are the best. They have said, oh yes, they are the best in some certain situations. And we say this isn't the motion. The motion is that introverts are the best and are always the best as these leaders, and they have not proven it to us. So let me finish with one final question. And before that, I'd like to draw back to the definition that we gave at the very beginning of the speech, based by Carl Jung himself, the person who coined this phrase. Now, he said that introverts, by definition, think about themselves and only take into consideration what they feel. And we say, so, do you want leaders that think about themselves? Or do you want leaders that think about the people, about you? And so this is why we believe that introverts do not and will not make the best leaders. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we get a big round of applause for all our speakers that's here today? Alright, so now what the time is. It's time for you guys to contribute. So if you have anything to say, please line up on the 2 aisles. We got microphones set up. But before that, let's also give a round of applause to our judges. We're going to go out and make their decision. All right, so we got a line up here. We got the alpaca up here. All right, so let's start with, are you ready over here? All right, let's start over here with this gentleman. Please say your name, what school and or country you're from, and then the point that you're to make. Guys, please keep it under a minute.
Hello? Okay, thanks. All right, I'm Spencer from the International School of Beijing. First off, I want to commend all of you speakers because they've not only made good points, but they have been hilarious. Okay, secondly, my question to both sides. Is Kim Jong-un an extrovert or an introvert? Please answer.
Has he taken like a Myers-Briggs test or something? Like, does he know? I am an E. I don't know. Do any of you actually know the answer to that question? I was not able to get a visa to North Korea. Alright. I don't think that this question particularly has a definitive answer to it, so... But thank you for that thought. I will ponder it wisely. Alright, over here, introduce yourself. Guys, we have the panel coming up, so I need you guys to show some love for the panel.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Philip Hess, and I'm representing the judges here to deliver our final verdict. So first, I'd just like to break down really shortly what we found that each team did well and what they might have been able to improve on. So first of all, from an argumentative standpoint, we found that overall, Team Negative had slightly stronger arguments. Their core arguments, their core values, the things that they were trying to persuade, had slightly more substantial backing to them. On the contrary, however, we found that Team Proposition or Affirmative delivered their arguments better. We found that they used slightly more appropriate examples and a slightly more endearing, I guess, approach and argumentative style than Team Opposition. So to summarize it, both teams did an excellent job, a lot of really excellent speakers, a lot of things that we could definitely learn from both sides, but overall, Team Opposition just making their arguments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can both of you just please stand up, shake each other's hands?